Thank you for tuning into the Pre-Patch Podcast. And check out these patch notes. Thanks for tuning in.
So, are you kicking off with me, or are you kicking
I'm
off
kicking
with
off with Bill.
With Bill? All right.
Bill's
Woo!
the one that you gave me. That gave it first.
Let's go.
Okay. So, Bill, you were playing Final Fantasy 16. Hey, warning! This game obviously, literally, just dropped.
Yeah,
just dropped today. I picked the most non-spoilery 15 minutes that I could, but this is a heavily cinematic game, like heavily cinematic game. So I can't guarantee you won't see something that might spoil something. So
if you're wanting to play it, just like don't look at the screen. You can still listen. We'll try and be spoiler free as much as possible. But
oh yeah, I'll be completely spoiler free talking about it. But
audio only.
It's I've been playing it.
It's
7
trash.
hours today, right before the stream.
Terrible, right? Like that's
it's the worst thing I've ever played. I don't know what they thought they were doing.
I was right.
Square Enix is a shell of their former selves. Yoshi P should be fired. Along with Phil Spencer.
Whoa now. Okay, now we're getting into moments that like that's fighting words, bro. I will punch you. Okay, you don't talk shit about Yoshi P, sir.
All right, but for real, the game's pretty good. The game is really good. It is a huge departure from any Final Fantasy game of past, in both positive and negative ways. There's some aspects that I'm really enjoying. Most aspects, actually, I'm really enjoying. But there's a few things that I have gripes with. So, Final Fantasy 16, first mainline Final Fantasy game we've had in, when was Final Fantasy 15? It's been like 5+ years.
5 years, 5 or 6, yeah. Because Final Fantasy 15 released in
2016.
So I was about to say 2016, 2017.
Okay, so 7 years, something like that. Is my math bad? My math's real bad, isn't it? Yeah, this is 2023. Okay.
Regardless, you're good. 7 years, yeah.
Game is also completely next gen. There was no PS4 port to it. It is only on PS5 as of right now. 6-month exclusivity on that. Hopefully it comes to PC after that. Will we see it on Xbox?
I'm gonna go and make a change.org petition to get this
on
over
PC
on PC and Xbox, because this is so unfair. And why should we have Starfield when we can't have Final Fantasy 14? God damn it.
Yeah. But the game is a huge departure from classic Final Fantasy. It's still going in that action mode, like what Final Fantasy 15 did, what Final Fantasy 7 Remake
which
did.
We know, Sin, you don't like. We're aware.
Yes, Sin wants his turn-based, and you have Octopath. It's fine.
Okay.
But it's weird. So this is probably the most cinematic we have ever seen a Final Fantasy be, a franchise that is already very heavy in its storyboarding and its cinematography. The first 2 hours of this game, I maybe had 4 combat segments total.
Yeah.
And that was what you can play in the demo of the game. Like the prologue is the demo for the game that's out right now is the entirety of the prologue. It is that first 2 hours of the game. And it is extremely story based. Also, you can pet Torgal. I was very happy to see that the goodest boy get the lovin's that he deserves. And
if you couldn't have pet the dog, would you have given it a lower score?
No, fuck this game.
I already said at the beginning it was 0 out of 10 games piece of shit if you can't pet the dog.
Yeah.
100%. If they have the dog being the only permanent companion you have and you can't pet him, that's an L. And luckily they didn't go that route. But it's a very cinematic heavy game. You are going to be watching a movie. It honestly reminds me a lot of medieval Metal Gear. You know how Kojima loves making extremely long cinematics in his games? It's paced out exactly like that, for better or for worse. So if you don't like your action being cut up constantly by cutscenes, this might get a little bit irritating on you. But I will say, from the story that I've gotten so far with it, it is extremely engaging. Like, it has its hooks in me. I really want to know what goes on next. None of it so far has been dull or boring or made me want to skip a cutscene. I am fully invested in what I am seeing. anytime the cinematics go off. And what I'm even more invested in is the combat system. It is an extremely engaging combat system. A lot of people are comparing it to like a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta style combat system. It is not quite as high flying as those, but it is definitely in the realm of that style of hack and slash.
For sure. I can definitely see it. Yeah. It honestly also reminds me, and I said it in your live chat. It reminds me a little bit of like Dragon's Dogma to some extent. But,
yeah,
which is not a bad thing.
I've yet to play Dragon's Dogma. It's on my list, especially with 2 being ported forward. But it's good. It's not overly complex, but it looks good and it feels good to play. The controls are extremely smooth, which you need for this style of combat. Everything's very responsive. You have your dodges, you have perfect dodges, you have aerial combat. Like a Devil May Cry game, you have your knock-up moves that will translate into aerial moves when then you ground the enemy, and then you do a super move on top of them. You have ranged attacks, you have melee attacks, you can kind of intersperse magic into your combos with certain button presses. The dog, you have a little bit of control over where you can like tell them to target a specific enemy, or you can have the dog heal you. Because anytime you take damage in this game, it's kind of like Bloodborne, where there's a little gray portion of your health bar that is what you lost. And if you ask Torgal to heal you, it'll slowly regen up that gray health bar as long as you don't take damage again, which I think is neat. So it kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility. Okay, I made a mistake. I can recover this as long as I don't make any mistakes while that's still healing up.
Pet the dog. We just saw Pet the dog.
Pet the dog.
Just want my
Sin. I've got it. I've got it right here. I've got it right here. Okay. This is how you can play this game, right? So what you need to do is anytime you attack something, as soon as your attack hits, pause the game. And then unpause it, let them attack you and pause the game. And then unpause it and then attack them. Then you got there's your turn-based strategy right there, bro. Fixed. There you go.
I get that. I understand that I'm nostalgic and wanting something old school. I just and yes, realistically, like the only thing that is tying this to the franchise is legitimately the name. I mean, obviously there's the world, right? Like
it's got the world. It's got certain
there's continuity. I'm just saying, like the mechanic of Final Fantasy has never been like that's not been the deciding factor of a Final Fantasy game, right? I like turn-based games. I prefer them, not saying that like, and I guess again, I know that my nostalgia is kicking in saying, oh, I remember my Final Fantasy was turn-based. If this was not Final Fantasy and they scrapped the name Final Fantasy, like I really am. I don't want to say like I'm not hating on the game. Like the game does look like it's amazing and it's fun. And, I don't know about having like a fucking playing for 7 hours or 2 hours and only having like 4 minutes of fucking, fight time.
Not that's 4 minutes, just 4 fighting segments.
Well, that's because Sin again, like Sin is.
I don't hate story.
Story. You 100% do, sir.
No, I don't mind. I just don't want to be fucking dragged like through a story. Like I don't know, man.
The story is very engaging.
I like how he doesn't want to get dragged through a story, but yet he was okay with being dragged through the useless fucking story of Diablo 4.
I didn't get dragged through the useless story of Diablo 4. I skipped every single cutscene.
Oh god, well that explains even more. So,
no, I didn't skip cutscenes, but I skipped the dialogue like that I could and watch the cutscenes.
Yeah,
well, again, the game does look good, and again, I played like playing Stranger of Paradise. Like I know it's a different style, but it's still the more action based. I played 15. I didn't have the game. I don't have a problem with it. Like I just again, yes, I am playing to a character of like I would. Like, do you still have me up as a sick? I just realized you still have me up here as a sick.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I guess I'm technically still ill, but like I'm not. Okay. Anyway,
I mean, you're just glad I don't have that thermometer shoved up your ass right now, bro.
Shut up.
Just saying. Let's go and make sure you're good over there too. Okay.
So the game feels good in a majority of the aspects. One thing that I will that's detracting from me at this point, and I don't know if it's going to change in the future. You know how a lot of people had issues with Final Fantasy 13 because it was super duper linear. there was not a lot of like moving from zone to zone. It was basically cutscene to like a small walking segment in a very narrow hallway to fight, and then boss, and then that's it.
Yeah.
This is following that formula pretty heavily at this point. There's been a few zones that have opened up a bit wider with some outstretching stuff, but it all funnels into the same point. And you don't move from area to area organically. It's all done from a world map that you will fast travel to those locations, similar to what Final Fantasy Origin was. Again, I don't know if it's going to open up later in the game, but that is honestly probably the only detractor that I have.
I don't think that
breaks me up a little bit.
I don't think the game was ever slated to be like an open world game. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I don't think it was ever really advertised.
It either was never slated to be an open world game, or it might have been early in conception, and then they added that.
Well, wasn't that one of the big complaints about 15 was that some like the openness of it was kind of, there was some dull moments of like trying to drive from one place, and so that people were just fast traveling anyway.
Yeah. So 15, the open world while you were driving around the regalia was pretty
boring, not
super engaging. And same thing with Forspoken, honestly. It had much of the same issues that 15 did. So I think they were just wanting that to not be an issue, because Square, I don't think, is comfortable in the open world space at this point. They've tried it twice. They failed at it twice. I wouldn't say 15 was a failure, but it definitely wasn't the highlight of that game.
Right.
So they went with the mission-based thing, and the areas themselves look amazing. The fights are the most organic. You can still tell that they're fight rooms, but they feel the most natural out of a Square Enix game that we've had so far. And the areas are just a joy to wander through. And for me, it's a downside, but I don't think I think I might be in the minority in that opinion. I think a lot of people would rather not just walk from point A to point B if it's not going to be super engaging. And I don't think they had a way of getting it to be super engaging.
That's me with like Final Fantasy 14 is like that. I'm glad that they have teleportation in Final Fantasy 14, because otherwise, like, yeah, the world is pretty 100%. You're gonna see some really beautiful like vistas and everything like that, but like between that was one of the biggest annoyances that I had for 14 was like up until the point that you obtained like a mount and shit, like just walking between the different areas was boring as shit, and it took forever. So
well, this is a perfect transition actually into our next game, which would be Diablo 4. I don't know. I don't know if there's any final points that you want to kind of make to this, but
nah, I'm only 7 hours into it so far. I'm enjoying it very much. We can have a more fleshed out conversation next week once I finished it.
All right.
Nice.
There you go. Final Fantasy 4 or 16.
There's a demo available if you have a PS5 and you want to give it a try.
Still gonna make that petition. I'm gonna make it tomorrow. It's coming out. Yes. Thank you for checking out the patch notes. If you enjoyed this small selection from our podcast, come join us every Thursday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern for the full unfiltered pre-patch podcast. And check out our past shows on anchor.fm/prepatch podcast.